today I'm going to do an exploration video. It's been a while since I've done one of these. If you've looked at my videos over the last few weeks, you probably noticed I've been in a Napoleonic mood. So I thought it's time to do an exploration of the Battle of Waterloo. Now, the Battle of Waterloo, or the Campaign of Waterloo, depending on the coverage that you're looking at, is one of the more iconic battles in wargaming history. It ranks up there probably with Gettysburg and Battle of the Bulge as one of the more gamed topics. And because of that, it's one of the battles that I have the most games on. If I look at all the battles that I have coverage for, this one I have the most titles dedicated to that subject matter. Along with that, I have probably the most, history books dedicated to Waterloo as well. And one of my first books that I'm very fond of is David Chandler's Waterloo: The 100 Days. I've had this since, well, not this version, but I read this, first time I probably read this was back in middle school, and have been, fond of this treatment ever since. Probably my go-to book now is the Waterloo Campaign, June 1815, from the Great Campaigns. This is a great book, and, is more like a reference type book. It really covers a lot of array of topics and different looks at the battle and statistics and what have you. So I really like this book. Other books that I have on this topic are Waterloo: Day of Battle, which is a good treatment as well, good read. And then I also have kind of opposing views of Napoleon at Waterloo and Wellington, Napoleon and Waterloo and Wellington at Waterloo, both from the Napoleonic Library. Good reads as well if you want to get into the subject matter. But that is a lot of books on the topic. But let's get into the games. As I normally do with exploration games, I start with the least complex and try to work my way up in complexity. Sometimes there's going to be some similarities in complexity as I go through this, but I just thought I would kind of categorize it this way and go up the scale. The first one I'm going to look at is a postcard game, Garde Recule, which is, there's your rules right there, and there are your counters. Now, so this is from Against the Odds magazine. Usually gives these out along with their magazines. You can get these free, and sometimes you can also get the full counters on a separate sheet instead of having to cut these out. But you have your rules here, and there is your board, a very, very small board because it is on a postcard. So this is a pretty basic game. As you can tell, the rules fit on a postcard, and you have all your components right there. So this is probably the easiest one, and this is dealing with an attack at Waterloo, the guard attack at Waterloo. So there you go there. The next one I have on that I want to talk about came in this adventure gaming. This was an SPI kind of introduction to war games special. It had a science fiction game, The Creature That Ate Sheboygan, The Creature That Ate New York. It was based off that other game. Military history, Napoleon at Waterloo, and then fantasy role-playing. It had a kind of an RPG in it. So you had a war game, a science fiction game, and a RPG. The history game was the Napoleon at Waterloo, and then you had your rules inside here. The rules were, not too many pages here. Basically, about 4 pages of rules, triple column, actually some color in there as well, but that was your rules to the game. Very, very simple introductory hex and counter game. And here was your mat board that came with it. This was in the middle of the magazine that you had to kind of unstaple and pull out. But as you can see here, it had the starting positions of the different units on the board there. And you had your combat results table. Pretty standard fare stuff. Your game track and your terrain was actually there on the description of the terrain on the map board itself. So that is a pretty introductory treatment. Here's your counters. You had your combat factor and your movement value on the counters there. And these were standard fare SPI type counters. you know, kind of a basic muted colors. You know, the font, I think, is very standard for SPI. But there's your counters that you had on here. So you had, you know, you had your British, your French, and then your Prussians that come in later in the scenario. So that was a great introductory game to the Battle of Waterloo. And my first Waterloo game that I had played was Napoleon at Waterloo, the classic SPI game. That, as you see here from the fold out too, you had examples of attack on there, and then this was dealing with some of the counters, talking about your this was dealing with some of the counters pieces that show you an example of the counters on there. So that's what you had with Napoleon at Waterloo. Very great, in my opinion, good introductory game into hex and counter wargaming. You know, the next one I have on the list is Napoleon's War, the 100 Days. This deals with several of the battles that are at that are covered in the 100 Days, or really the four main battles that were surrounding, you know, the Battle of Waterloo. And this is a relatively easy game to get into. Here's the map board on it, good size hexes, and then you have, it basically has minis, or little miniatures that you have on here. So you got a sample of an artillery piece, you know, French cavalry piece, and then some British infantry, and there's also Prussians in here as well. And this is basically almost kind of a bucket of dice game. You're going to be rolling multiple dice and trying to get hits, and when you get hits on a unit, you take them off the board. So you're going to be maneuvering and then trying to get units into the point of so you can, you know, focus your firepower and roll better hits on your units. And of course, the artillery has range, and they can fire a little bit farther with their hits, and the cavalry, of course, has a shock value. And here's the setup card. Here's your battle card. It shows where you set up on there. And this is, you know, for other battles that are in here. But, you know, the rules are not very complex here. You're looking at, here's the advanced rules on this page. Let's see what you got here. They don't have page numbers on here, but, you know, it's a dual column, you know, color with examples, but really not super complex of a game here. You have some, you know, rules on doing squares in there, and there's some counters that you can use for that. But again, this is a great introductory game, I guess, into this battle. Again, it's using minis, so some people, you know, some of your diehard wargamers might say that, oh man, you got little toy pieces. Does this really recreate the battle? And it does a fair job. I mean, this is, you know, to me, is somewhat similar to, you know, your Command and Colors type treatment that came later on with Napoleonics, in that you're moving, you know, visual pieces. With Command and Colors uses blocks, but this one, you know, uses little minis, but you're taking pieces off as they get hit and reduced. So that is my next game I have on the list. Let's do the reveal, and let's see what the next game I have on the list. Again, I'm going in kind of in complexity type order here. The next one I have on that I want to take a look at is Field Commander Napoleon. Now this is a series of games, and basically are a series of campaigns of, you know, recreating the career of Napoleon. And so you're going to be, you know, starting in Italy, and then, you know, going to Egypt, and then, you know, working your way through all the different campaigns. There's even Russia in here. But the last one in here is the 100 Days campaign. And this is a relatively easy system in that it's a solitaire system. So here's your counters, and the counters are you know, well, I keep them organized per the campaign. So you see that there's an 1815 on there that shows, you know, what scenario this goes to. So there's going to be, I have bags of these counters because there's several different scenarios in here. But the rules of this are really not that complex. You're going to have, this is the 1815 scenario. So this is the setup for it. And then you're going to have your turn track. And then you're going to be moving you're going to have some victory conditions that you need to try to accomplish. But, you know, it's basically an area movement and combat. And then the AI or should say that the AI will take over the opposition. So the AI will play, the British and the Prussians in this scenario, and you're always Napoleon and trying to achieve at least what he achieved, or do better. And if you achieve less than what he did, then you lose the scenario. So there's an AI for enemy orders and how they move, and then there's combat. There's like a battle board for combat where you take your units off and then handle them on a battle board. So that's the next in the series. Again, this is really a piece of a larger group of campaigns. You're trying to recreate, again, the whole career of Napoleon. So as a subject matter for the Waterloo Campaign or battle, mainly this is the campaign, this is more operational level. It's okay. It's not great, but it's not that complex either. If you wanted to, this is better as an experience of playing through all the campaigns and getting the full experience there. The next one that I have on my list to go over is Napoleon, the Waterloo Campaign, 1815 for Columbia Games. This is a block game. And so this is, it's not an overly complex treatment, especially if you have any experience with block games. In fact, this to me is reminiscent of, Napoleon at Waterloo, the SPI game, but this is done in a block treatment. When you have a battle, you're going to have this battle board to have your center right, left, and reserve. And you have your typical blocks that are going to keep track of steps. So like this is a Prussian, and so it's at 4. If it takes a hit, it goes down to 3, and then so on. And if it takes the last hit, it's removed from the board. This is artillery. You've got infantry. Here's a British infantry, French cavalry, and all over the place, British cavalry. So, it's a block treatment. When you're on the board, you're going to be moving from like almost point to point. You're going to be moving on the board. And of course, it has a fog of war. The French would be, facing, one way, and then the British or the Allies would be facing another way. And then, so you have kind of a fog of war. You don't know what's the composition of the forces until you attack it. And then you do battle again from on that battle board. So this is, again, pretty standard fare block treatment. This is more operational level, again, because you're moving around the entire area, not just the Waterloo battlefield. In fact, they were trying to get to Brussels as part of the Napoleon's objective. So it's definitely a larger scope of the theater in that case. The next one I want to go to on the list is another Columbia game, and that is the Eagles, the Napoleon Eagles game, which was a card game that you basically had that, just like you have the battle board in the Columbia block game. You're going to lay out these cards in the same way. You're going to have a center, right, left, and reserve for your cards. And then they have, combat. This is basically kind of taking some of the block elements of Napoleon at Waterloo, but putting them on the cards. And the way you move your units up, you basically, that is the battle. And then this set also had, had cards that dealt with it had Waterloo, but it also had dealt with the other battles that were surrounding the other 3 battles that were surrounding Waterloo as well. So here's your French cards, and then there's some terrain cards that could come into play. Then you had the British, and then you have the Prussians in here. Well, here's the Prussians over here. So you had some certain action cards that come into play as well. But this was basically more of a combat and use dice to, resolve your combat. Again, to me, it was more of a taking of the block game and translating it to a card game on the battle. So it's also published by, Columbia Games. So imagine that. The next one that I have on the list is this is from Fading Glory, which is originally, this is done by GMT, but this was originally done by Victory Point Games as part of their Napoleonic 20 series. And the goal of the Napoleonic 20 series was to do Napoleonic battles, but you want to have low counter density. They wanted to keep it down to like 20 counters on the board at a time, or around that. So the focus was on keeping it at a very low counter density, but also a playable game. And so this is originally was a whole series of games put out by Victory Point Games, and then GMT took it over. I don't know what the future of this series is. This one had 4 battles in it, including Waterloo. And then there's, I have some of the Victory Point games that kind of came in Ziploc bags. If you're familiar with Victory Point Games at all, they were just a couple of steps above print and play. They got better later on, but some of the earlier offerings were, again, Ziploc bag and just a few steps above print and play. So this is Fading Glory, Waterloo 20, and here's the map for that. And as you can see, it's a mounted map, which is very nice. On the backside is another battle, so you get 2 mounted maps in Fading Glory, and they're dual-sided. It comes with cards. These are cards that are specific to the Waterloo campaign. It's not card-driven, it's card-assisted. These are almost like events that you play, and then the blue is if the French have it in their hand, you use from the same deck of cards, and the blue will play. The French will play the blue side, and the British or Prussians or the Allies will play the coalition, I should say, will play the bottom side here. And so these change the event, affect the game through events somewhat, or modify the rules a little bit, but are not. You don't use the cards to drive the game, and there's not very many of here for the scenario, so you only play a few during any given scenario. The counters are very nice. They are, pre-punched, rounded counters already, so very good quality. This is the Napoleon for this scenario, and you can see they're dual-sided there. Here's a British. Here's Prussian, here's Blucher, Leader, here's Wellington. So very nice counters, good thickness there, rounded, nice, nice counters. Did I say nice? So there's some example of some of your units there. So, and this is not an overly complex system. It's got a, here's your combat results table. The combat results of this, the one thing about the Napoleonic 20 series that I found is, there's not a lot of, destroying, like when you try to surround and then try to destroy a unit and remove units from the game. There's a lot of withdrawals. There's a lot of, retreating and withdraw and pushing back on this. So at least that's been my experience. So they make for interesting games, especially with the lower counter density, and with withdrawals, you're not removing a lot of counters, so a lot of them kind of stay on the board. And there's your terrain effects charts there. But the rules are not, not that, really not that complex. You got 16 pages of rules, but, there's some designer notes in there. There's optional rules. So, and it's dual-sided. It's not, it's a little bit dense, but not, oh, and of course, this talks about some of the scenarios as well. Oh, this is the playbook. Sorry, I got the playbook. So there's the playbook. It's 16 pages and goes to different scenarios. Here's the rule book itself. Rule book is, again, 16 pages. Oh, there we go. I didn't misspeak. Dual column, color, talking about all the issues. Again, I like this rule book better than the Victory Point Games rule book. They were kind of highlighted, and I found them kind of chaotic and hard to get through. I like that GMT put it in a more standardized fashion here. And with GMT, you get a rule book and you get a playbook with it. So that's the next one I have on my list that covers the Battle of Waterloo. And this does a fair job of it. I mean, again, it doesn't have a ton of counters, so it's a little bit easier to get to the board and get through in a setting. These don't take a tremendous amount of time to play. Next one I have is a new entry into the system, or into covering Waterloo, and that is Waterloo Campaign of 1815. This is a Mark Herman design, and he's continuing. This was based on he did a Gettysburg game that was kind of had similar mechanics. Then he did this Waterloo, and now he's doing I think a series of Civil War battles more based on I think on this system than going back to the Gettysburg system. The Gettysburg, I think, was a little bit easier, was a little bit simpler than I guess what this is. But this is again, campaign. So this is operational level. Here's the map, so you're getting a bigger picture of the surrounding area. The French will start generally down here, and British up here, and then the Prussians from over here, and then you will get and it's operational level. And there's not a lot of counters that are in this game. Here are all the counters. This is the French. Here are the coalition, and so the gray are the Prussians, and the white are the British. And again, so that's it. I mean, that's all. That's your counters. So not a lot of counters in this game, but there are some unique mechanics in this game and how it plays out. Again, the rules. This looks like a lot of rules here, but really it's very lavishly illustrated. Here's a full. Here's your scenarios, but then you have an example of play, an illustrated example of play that comes with this. And this came in a C3I magazine, but also you could get a boxed edition of this if you wanted. I got the C3I magazine edition. But so the rules are not, you're talking about a full example of play here and scenarios on page 8. So really about 7 pages of rules probably here, dual column. And so it's not that complex, and it has a kind of a different perspective or a new look on, kind of the campaign version, or the campaign, or the operational level of Waterloo. So the next one I have on my list is a really recent acquisition. In fact, I just did an unboxing video of it not too many days ago, and that is Napoleon's Last Battles. And this is a classic. This has been around for a long time and been reprinted several times. But and this is a Kevin Zucker game system, and this is the 4th edition of it that came out from Decision Games. I think this is like 2015. But this is, not too bad as far as getting through the rules. It's dual column. It's kind of Decision Games format. So, not the greatest, but you can get through it. It's understandable. It's got color. It's got examples. This isn't an overly complex game either. It's been around for quite a bit of time, and it's been, I think, updated a little bit and tweaked a little bit over time. But it does a good job of giving you the feel of this battle. And actually, the last battle has all 4 of the surrounding battles of the last day. And this is the La Belle Alliance map, or the Waterloo map, which is the ultimate battle, or the culmination of the 100 days. Again, it's not overly complex, but it's, given some of the other ones that I just went through, it's one of the more complex that I have. I have relatively basic games on some of this. The last one I have on this is really not a super complex game either, but just because of the nature of it and the detail, I put it at the end, and that is Battles of Napoleon. Big box. This is the Eagle and Lion, Battles of Napoleon. Huge box here. In fact, let's pull out the box here and take a look at some of the goodies that you get inside here. So this is going to be, more of a tactical system. This is, akin to like some of what you're used to seeing, like in the Squad Leader, or Conflict of Heroes, or Lock and Load, or all those games. This is more of a tactical level. So you have these geomorphic maps that are huge. I mean, look at the thickness on that. So you get like several of these dual-sided and you'll do different scenarios. And this has some scenarios for Waterloo and the 100 Days. It also has several of the Peninsula scenarios in as well. But it's basically kind of a glorified minis game. You're going to have miniatures. You're going to put these on bases to kind of mark your troops or organization. You know, it's even got, it's got cavalry, and it's got, you know, guys that can ride on the cavalry. Let's get one of those. Oh, what happened to my riders? I lost my riders. Well, he ran away. Lost him. He got thrown from his horse. There we go. There's a guy right there. So, I mean, it's got all kinds of minis in there, and then you're going to have your cards that kind of give you commands and control, and so this is really a very highly tactical game on how the battle. So it's from the standpoint of getting a bigger picture of the battle, not so much. This is more of, you know, at the closest level or down to the more granular level of the battle. And these cards, you know, will help you modify combat and help you do orders. And again, there's all kinds of components in here that that affect, you know, that you use through the gameplay. It's even got, you know, I mean, look at the level of detail here. You've got, well, let me just pull this one out here. This is a little bit more interesting here. Okay. Hope I didn't get a picture. You got a little ball. You got your cannonballs that you put next to the, to your artillery. So, so this is the more complex of the games that that I have, in that there's just a lot of moving components here. I mean, the rule book itself is, God, they don't put page numbers. I hate that when they do that. Oh, 47 pages of rules. Now, it is illustrated, and it has some examples. I mean, it's lavishly illustrated, so that's good. But, you know, it's a relatively, you know, complex game. You know, here's your commander cards, and it talks about, you know, how you do orders and how they modify different things, and they affect melee and morale and all kinds of different aspects of the game. So, you know, this is basically kind of a tactical level battle kit, so to speak. But it does have Waterloo specific battles that are just looking at very, very close-in aspects of the battle. So that is my exploration of the Battle of Waterloo. I hope you found this interesting. Probably went a little bit long on this one, but there was a lot to cover. It's the most games I have as far as focusing on one battle. So if you like, please like. If you want to see more, please subscribe. Hit the bell so you know when the subscription is coming out. And what's your comments? What do you think about these games? I know there's a lot of other Waterloo games out there. What am I missing? What should I get? Like, because, you know, I don't get enough games. What about these? What do you like about some of these games? What don't you like about some of these games? Get a conversation started. Always like to see that, and I think that's healthy. But most of all, thanks for watching.